All right. Welcome, everyone. Today we have a special guest and some special programming for you. I'm Craig Power with Power Realty Advisors, located in Marshfield, Mass. And joining me live, not really live, but we're recording this live, the executive director of Marshfield Community Media, the official tastemaker of the town of Marshfield, Jon Grabowski. Thank you for taking the time, my friend. How are you?
I'm well, and it's pretty fun to be called special because it
Yeah.
definitely is a special. Special is one way you could describe me and the organization. So,
I
but I'm
was
really
like,
glad to be here.
that tastemaker thing was a note I made. I was like, I got to really get that out there. This guy's like, the Rolling Stone magazine of
I see it.
Marshfield. Yeah.
Yeah, you're giving me way too much credit.
But I want to get right into it because I was there at the beginning of your tenure in 2008. At that time, it was Marshfield Community Television. Things look quite different.
Mhm.
So, can you tell us about your experiences, maybe the changes you've seen over that 16-year period? Maybe a better question would be the name change alone from community television to now Marshfield Community Media, if you could expand on that a little bit for us.
Yeah, so it's as you mentioned, Craig. It's been a huge change. Um, First off, me as a person, when I started, I think I was hired as the executive director. I was 25. I was living at home with my parents, and I'm 41 today, and I have a 1-year-old, and I've lived in Marshfield for about 15 years now, and we're on our second home. So, grown as a person, definitely. The technology change has been the biggest thing, I would say. First off, when we first started Marshfield Community Media, MCTV, whatever you want to call it, if you wanted to be seen in the community, you came to us. Nowadays you just pull out your phone, put up your favorite social media app, and you can be seen everywhere in the world. So that's been a huge change technology-wise, how people consume media, how people use MCM. Our membership model has changed dramatically, where it was very member user-oriented. Now it's not as oriented that way, and it's become kind of partnerships with people. How people use MCM has changed dramatically, especially in this post-pandemic world where, people knew who we were, what we did, and then they really relied on us during the pandemic. And then post-pandemic, they're like, oh yeah, you did this. Can you do this for us too? So the needs of the community have grown dramatically, especially in the past few years in this post-pandemic environment. Our business model has changed. That's been a huge part of it. We were kind of flying by the seat of our pants for many years and talking about name change. So a couple of years ago, we did a strategic plan. I was sitting at board meetings, and we were saying the same things literally every board meeting, saying, where are we going? What are we doing? Where are we going? What are we doing? And I said, you know what? Let's bring someone in and do a strategic plan and give us a roadmap. So we did it. This was back in 2021. And one of the things that we talked about was a name change. So flash forward to, I think, the beginning of 2022, we were talking about that strategic plan a little bit more, and we brought in another consultant to talk about staffing and work management, et cetera. And one of the things that she brought up was, you should consider changing your name because you guys are more than a TV station. And it was like, well, literally, we had this conversation like 6 months ago with another consultant. So myself and our new board at the time said, let's do a name change. Kicked around ideas, and we settled on Marshfield Community Media, did a logo change, you name it, because it reflects what we do. We're more than just a TV studio. People do podcasting with us. We've done some gaming stuff. We're a news organization. We're a full-on multimedia organization. So that's how we came up with the name. That launched back in July of 2022. And it's been a really great, the community's really loved it. It really reflects who we are, what we do. But the biggest thing has been the change in technology. We've evolved as an organization, just like any other company. And we're getting to the point where it's almost going to be MCM 3.0. Our MCM 1.0 was, back in the old days, trying to figure out who we are, what we did, get it off the ground. 2.0 was moving into the new high school. And now 3.0 is with this ever-changing technological landscape and the changes in our funding mechanisms and whatnot. Where do we go from there, and how do we serve the community?
Yeah. Yeah, the media landscape has, of course, changed quite a bit. I felt like you guys were early adopters of that for sure.
I would I would say so. I think in some ways we were, some ways we weren't. What's really great about the community media industry, especially Massachusetts, that Massachusetts is a real hotbed for community media. There's over 150 media centers across the Commonwealth. A lot of us are very similar in that we're nonprofit organizations. We do a lot of the same services, and we all kind of share ideas. We share a lot of ideas. Hey, what works for you? What doesn't work for you? Or how can I take something that a station double my size has done and apply it to my community?
Mm-hmm.
So we had that. We had some great resources. We had some great technology partners that we worked with. And we had a really good board of directors that was kind of pushing us into doing more. And we have a great board now that's really taken that to the next level. So we try to be forward thinking. Also, community media, unfortunately, especially in Marshfield at the time when we started, didn't have a great reputation. So it was kind of the number one thing was to change the mindset of people of what community media is and what community media can do.
You're here promoting an event. Let's treat this like a radio spot for a minute. So Jon, just imagine in your head, I have like 8 million YouTube subscribers. Let's just play pretend for a minute. But you're here promoting an event, Tee Up to Gear Up, Friday, April 26th, 6 to 9 p.m., Winslow's Golf Range. Can you tell us about the event you're putting on?
I would love to. So we've been talking about there doing a fundraising event for about a year now, because we're looking to diversify our revenue. And a perfect time because we're looking at our FY25 capital, and we're looking to make some major purchases. One being our broadcast server, which is the thing that runs 365, 24/7. We've had that since we've had our current server since 2016. And, the way I described it is, imagine if your computer or your phone was running every single application 24/7, 365 for about, 8 years or so. You think it might be time to replace that. Mm-hmm. And then we're also looking to upgrade one of our production switchers that's been with us since we moved into Marshfield High School back in 2014. So we're looking to do some sort of capital campaign. So we said, let's do a fundraising event. So we got to know the folks over at Winslow's Green Harbor Golf Club over the past year or so, fantastic people. And we said, let's do a golf event. We don't want to do a golf tournament, but let's make use of the facility. So Tee Up to Gear Up is April 26th, as you mentioned, 6 to 9 p.m. at Winslow's. Great night of food, golf, and some awesome raffle prizes. We have some really cool prizes that have been gifted to us by various community organizations and businesses and friends of the organization. We also have some great sponsors. GT Riley is our hole-in-one sponsor. Thanks to Jamie Moore, who's on the board at MCM. She's a partner at GT Riley, so they stepped up. We've also had some other great sponsors like Road to Responsibility, Tiny and Sons Auto Glass, Marshfield Boys and Girls Club, Marshfield Girls Lacrosse Boosters. Lara Bray have really stepped up to support it. So great night of golf, food, and awesome raffle prizes. We're going to be making use of the range that evening. Actually finalizing what the game is going to be that night, but it's a great opportunity for people that are golfers, non-golfers to get out there and have some fun. So we're really looking forward to it.
Love it. I'll tell you.
Most importantly, people can sign up and register on the website. So spots are filling quickly. So we have a cap on how many people we can have at the event because, we don't want it to be overcrowded at the range. So we're quickly filling up those spots so you can, buy a bay, become a sponsor, or buy raffle tickets if you can't make it. We've already had several people already Venmo us money for raffle tickets so they can, get into our excellent prizes.
There we go. That's the angle I might have to take. It's my mom's birthday, but I'm trying to make my own. I was trying to make my own arrangements. I said, Mom, enough with the birthdays. It seems like you have one of these like every year. As far as programming goes, what are some upcoming events, other than that? Right. Yeah. So that's more fundraising, programming. What events do you have or what are you covering coming up that maybe a Marshfield resident would want to know about? Let's go very local with this.
We just got out of a really busy winter season, especially February and March. Had one of our key staff members go on paternity leave. And of course he went on paternity right at the time when his position is at its busiest, when we get into sports tournaments and town election season. So I've been working on several major projects. We had a great winter sports season with both hockey teams making deep runs and MCM covering that. We've just stepped into our government season with town meeting right around the corner. So that always increases our workload
Sure.
Production wise, in regards to government meetings, you have a lot of boards who tend to do more stuff during that period. Right now, as we're sitting here talking April 12th, we're getting ready for town meeting and all the things that are associated with it. We'll be broadcasting that live, gavel to gavel, every night on our platforms. Town elections is something that I really always love. So we just kicked off Meet the Candidates yesterday. We're going to be interviewing candidates who are running for a select board and school committee. That's kind of one of my favorite things that we do here. One of the coolest projects we're currently working on is with the Marshfield Education Foundation. This is a partnership that we started. We started having discussions maybe in the fall. So one of the things that they said was, hey, everyone just knows us for the race, which is awesome. The race is great.
It's a great race. It's a great race. I talked to runners all over, and they're like, that's one of the races of the year anywhere in Massachusetts, anywhere in New England. It is a great race.
Yeah. So I'm not a runner. I'm a cyclist, but my wife got me the jogging stroller for Christmas.
Runners, we don't get along with cyclists.
My wife got me the jogging stroller for Christmas. So I was like, you know what? We're getting involved with the MEF, so I might as well run the 5K. So me and my little guy did the 5K. But so One of the things that they said is everyone knows us for the race. They don't know what the money's going to for the race, where it's going. So we're doing these grants and spotlight videos. So we've been working with them, spotlighting grants at each school. And there's some awesome grants that we've been able to film, ranging from like climbing walls to like Lego clubs to I mispronounced it, the Menage table here at the high school, but there's some amazing stuff that MEF's doing. So it's great to kind of help them work on that. Spring sports is a big thing for us. And then, our production service stuff, we work with a lot of local businesses to create content for them, whether it be podcasting, our digital marketing packages, doing video for web and social. So those projects keep us going. And then, before you know it, summer's going to be here. So I already have one eye on end of school year stuff with graduation, those events. And then summer's usually we try to be like, oh, we're going to have a relaxing, quiet summer here at MCM, but it never happens. Usually we take on one or two big projects for like a business or a nonprofit. But this summer, we're hoping to kind of play catch up on things that we don't get to do. One of the things as an organization, we are a promotion organization. We help businesses promote themselves, but also we need to do our own promotion. And sometimes our own promotional stuff gets on the back burner. So working on things like our Faces Marshfield series and promo videos are things that, hoping to work on this summer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was one thing moving back. I moved back to Marshfield 2 years ago. I grew up here, but moved back 2 years ago. And it wasn't until I moved back, had a business going that I realized what you guys do for business in the town, which is really huge. And that was sort of the inspiration for like, let's turn the tables and actually let you promote yourself here for a moment. And honestly, what you do now, I'm very interested in like media consumption habits. And I have this theory that as people are less interested in mainstream media outlets or just mainstream anything, it's not even like a mainstream news thing. There's just going to be this correlated interest in everything more local, local media, local politics, local involvement, local this and that. I do remember, I was a Marshfield High School graduate myself. The program when I was there was great. Not what it is today, but it was great. And at the time, I thought it was a really cool outlet. And a lot of that set me up for some of the media marketing I do today, which, is really a huge part of business, especially small business. At the time,
right,
taking like telecommunications class, which I'll tell you for my first year was practically like a study class at Marshfield High School. Those did not feel like business related skills. and here we are in the modern era where that's like a critical part of it. So for students today, because you guys do a lot for students as well. So what does Marshfield Community Media help to provide them?
Well, first off, it's great that you said it because I had this conversation literally a month ago with one of my best friends, estate attorney. And he said, marketing is the main part of my job. That's the thing I work on the most. The actual estate planning is like I can do that in my sleep at this point. It's really the marketing aspects, especially on the local level, is huge. But what we do for students. So you mentioned the high school program, which is amazing. That's one of the things that we were fortunate that we walked into here. There was already this really amazing high school telecommunications and digital media program. And I tip my hat every day to Brian Chakoshes and Jason Sosel for doing it. They're super passionate about it. And, with the amount of students that they work with on a day-to-day basis is awesome. So our relationship with the schools has been this ongoing developing thing. So when MCTV at the time first started, so we had some connections to the school department. Jason Sazo, who I mentioned, who teaches here, was on our board, and Joe Schrand, who was our MCTV's first president. His wife, Carol, was chair of the school committee at the time, and his family's been really active in the schools over the years. So we've literally been bedfellows with the school committee, with the school department at various points. But so the way it works with MCM is that we've always funded the program, since we started. We're a public education and government, media center. And the education side means we fund the equipment, the expenses. We don't pay for the teachers. We don't have oversight of a curriculum, but, we fund the program from like an equipment and capital standpoint. And then it got to a point where back in 2010, 2011, we were looking for a new home. As you remember the old place, Craig, it was a little rough. It was a little rough, but it was
I'm on some tapes in there that
yeah,
somebody probably burned in a fire at some point.
In character, but it was a little rough, and so we were looking for a new home.
Yeah.
At the same time, there was talk of a new high school, and because of our relationship and what we did with the schools, they said, "Hey, would you be interested in moving in?" And we kind of started a trend. There's been several media centers after us that have moved into school buildings. And it's really created that whole dynamic of the high school being a community building, having everyone involved. So that's been great. We've also had our MHS internship program. So it's something I started. I'm a huge believer in internships, getting skill sets at a young age. So, this is what you want to do, or helps you kind of guide your career later on. So we started that 16 years ago. We take top seniors from digital media and telecommunications. They intern for us during their senior year, which is awesome. It's great help for us. 75% of those kids usually go on to a 2 or 4 year college majoring in communications or related field, which is huge. And also what's cool is, sometimes they come back and work for us. We've had a couple who, interned for us in high school, went to college, and then came back and worked for us as professionals. For example, Heather, who's our production assistant, former MCTV MHS intern. We also do a grant with the schools. So we have a lease with the school department to use the facility here at Marshfield High School. And part of that grant and part of that agreement is that we have a $5,000 grant that goes to any staff or faculty member in the district who wants to do a media related, sort of thing that's outside the box. And we've been we've done some really fun things with that grant. We've had maker spaces done at some of the schools, or drones done at some schools. So it's really cool. And also, last but not least, we have our college internships that we do, which we occasionally have Marshfield kids and sometimes we don't. And that's great because they work on our newscast. We talked about the need for local media, hyperlocal stuff with, newspapers, kind of going away like the Mariner, and, WATD does an amazing job, but they have 20 something towns to cover. There was a definite need for local news, local reliable news. So we launched Marshfield Community News a couple of years ago. And in order to kind of meet the needs and get all that news done, we have interns college interns from local colleges that intern for us, fall, spring, and summer, helping us with news.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I was there as a student when they did a huge changeover in the telecommunications department. I was actually, for a little fun fact you might not know this about me, John, I was one of the original, they did like weatherman, like news type programming. I was one of the original weathermen in that program. I didn't last very long, but I was an original, I will say that. So it's a lot of fun.
I still see some of the stuff from when I started and even prior to, and it's some of the funniest content ever. Like I'll show like friends and family, like, this stuff is hilarious.
Yeah. It's and of course we have there was some stuff from the old days, right? So actually this sort of leads into like one of the questions I want to ask you, because you've seen a lot in your tenure with the town here. So off the top of your head, and we don't have to get like too far down the path we were on in 2008 when I first met you, but like just favorite memories, characters you've met. I'm sure there's a lot of memorable moments.
I wrote a bunch down when you sent me this question, because I was like, I'm going to forget something. So
this was like, I was dying to talk about this, because I know you've seen some stuff.
Yeah, I mentioned this to my wife, because my wife and I started dating after, MCTV was more established. We moved here, and I was
Mhm.
telling her about kind of like the old days, and I tell my staff about the old days because a lot of my staff have been here since maybe 2017 or so. So I was telling them about the old studio days. So, and it's funny because I do miss those sometimes.
Yeah.
When we were a smaller organization, we
The Wild West. It
didn't know what
was.
we were doing and flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah.
We talked about the old facility. We had small fires in there at one point. We had a flood one day. So I'll tell those two stories quickly. So we always do public service announcement days, something that we do every year. And we had this old janky light. And we were talking with this woman after she did her PSA. And, she's talking. She goes, "Oh, by the way, you have a small fire going on." And we're like, oh my God. And this piece of paper had just lit up on fire from this old light. If you remember the old MCTV facility, so my office is in another part of the building. We're in the building next across.
Yeah,
from
down the hall a bit. Yep.
And in the office next to us was a woman that did colonics. That's the best way I can describe it. So I was out one night on a Saturday, late one night, and got to bed at a late hour, and I got a call at like 6 o'clock in the morning, on Sunday, 6 o'clock in the morning, that the alarm in our studio was going off. And I'm like, oh, it must be a false alarm, whatever. Then I, like 10 minutes later, get a call from the building manager saying like, hey, this woman's freshwater tank like blew up basically. And there's what, and the whole place is basically like flooded. So running in there on a really exhausted Sunday morning, and like literally everything in both in the office and the facility are under like 6 inches of water was pretty entertaining.
At least it was the freshwater tank.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah, so we had to close down for like a week or so.
Yeah.
That's a great memory. A certain show that a bunch of college kids did back in 2008, which was really funny, to the point where I called my buddies. I'm like, you guys have to come and see this.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
I give them credit for, did some funny stuff, but being respectful to the point where they lined the entire facility with trash bags. So it's important that they kept themselves clean. And then also, I think one of the kids just kept crank calling the studio after you guys had left and didn't realize it. So
we had a lot of good bits.
Yeah.
We had a lot of good bits. The show was called Fahrenheit 781. And it was something that we started in high school, and then we came back a summer and did like a 6 or 8 episode run when you first started.
It was hilarious.
You were indoctrinated pretty quick, but we had some good bits. I think we had like weekly phone calls from Jean-Claude Van Damme at one point.
Yep.
And,
we
had well, I don't want to drop names, but there was one gentleman who like was like famous around town, and we would just talk about where we saw him out that week.
I was going to talk about him actually next.
That was.
I was.
Go for it.
So memories are characters. We've had some real characters that produce content here. There's one guy, Harrison Young, that he's infamous in the community media world in the South Shore. Ivana, my production manager, dealt with him at another media center, and like my first question to our interview was, "What's your best Harrison Young story?" Bob Parkus. So I know you want to talk Bob Parkus, and
this poor man. If I ever meet him, I'm gonna be like, "Look,
Bob and I got off," and I'll give you 2 Bob Parkus stories. I'll give you 1 or 2 Bob Parkus stories. I'm trying to think which one I'm going to give you. Actually, no, I'll give you 2. So Bob and I kind of got off on the wrong foot. At the time, Bob is, anti-establishment. I love Bob. We developed a great relationship later on, but he didn't get along with my board of directors. Him and my board had been battling at town meeting for the past 20 years. So I think at first he just saw me as the tool of, the man, basically.
Some baggage there, sure.
There was a lot of baggage, and I know nowadays I love Bob, but I'll give you 2 quick Bob stories. So early on in my tenure, Frank Hines, who was the state rep, had decided to retire, and everyone's singing these glowing praises of Frank Hines and what a great guy is. Bob starts the show and goes, "Look, people are going to say all this great stuff about Frank Hines, but let me tell you, he was just your typical tax and spend Democrat, and just does a 5-minute like character assassination of the guy," which was really funny. The other one was, it involves him calling my parents' house. So this has got to be 2010ish or so. Maybe no, 2010, 2011. moved out of my parents' house in '09, and this is a couple years afterwards. So we were talking broadcast servers earlier and why we're fundraising. Prior to the one we have now, we had this broadcast server that caused us every issue. It was just like that one piece of equipment that there was always a problem with it. And it was getting really temperamental, and it was impacting people's programming, etc. And at the time, Bob and I were starting to develop this relationship, and he knew I grew up in Hanover. I don't know how he remembered it, but there was an issue on a Saturday evening, and it happened to be a Saturday evening. I was at my parents' having dinner, and at 6:00 at my parents' house in Hanover, the phone rings, and who is it? But Bob Park is calling my parents to complain about why there's an issue with this program. And granted, I hadn't lived in Hanover like 3 years, and he just picked the perfect time to call my parents' house and complain. And I was like, "You got to be kidding me!"
That's so good. That's so legendary.
But
I love that.
yeah,
There's a lot of like real estate sales guru guys that would be like, I love that tenacity. What follow through to go
Bob,
after it like that.
Yeah, but Bob's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
do a show for as long as he did is amazing. It was funny because we were and he was, always prepared. He's very much in a lot of ways the model member for a community media center, organized, prepared, ready to go, came in early, had his stuff together. It was funny because we were at a conference years ago, and the discussion was on fair use. How you can take something that's copyrighted and use it and twist it in a way that, you're not taking away from, the actual meaning of the content. And Bob was notorious for doing a lot of that stuff where he would take a clip from like Best in Show and turn it into like, this is your typical Marshfield taxpayer. And we're listening to this attorney talk about fair use and how to properly use it. And Chris Lana, who was our production manager at the time, were looking at each other going, this is Bob. He's talking about Bob Parkus.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's my Bob Parkus stuff.
Our bit with him was like, and granted, this was like I want to lay this up properly. This was literally almost 20 years ago. We were like high school seniors, and he was like the fixture when you turned on like Marshfield community, like the Marshfield station. He was like 40% of the time that was the face you saw. So as like kids doing this, there was only one person to talk about, that was like a fixture in the town.
A lot of people watch Bob to see what he would do. There's a lot of people I remember who disagree with Bob on almost everything in life, but tuned in to see what he was going to do, like what sort of hijinks he would pull. So those are memories.
Our bit would be like, our bit was like, if, just where we saw him out that week. That was it. There was no like content. It was nothing. We weren't rebutting anything he said. It was just like, I saw him at the library this week. He was at the library on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And we would just talk about that.
Yeah. Other memories I'll mention quickly.
Yeah.
We had our intern group, my first maybe 6-7 years, we always had some hilarious interns, and maybe being closer in age at the time, like you developed these relationships that were like, and especially because we were such a small organization, you're dealing with them more. Absolutely hilarious stuff. Town meeting hijinks, when you're sitting in the old days for 4 nights of town meeting, you got to keep yourself, somewhat, awake. So we used to do things like celebrity lookalikes, theme music for people at town meeting, you name it. We've had some great staff over the years. Looking back at the old days, Chris Lawn, our first production manager, and Leslie Zuhl's our second production manager, were huge in regards to, what we built on. It was, I worked really close to him because at the time it was a staff of 2. Chris had this was the real spirit of community media. And Leslie, after he left, Leslie joined us, and her production skill set took us to the next level. So those 2 people were huge in becoming what we are today. Construction of what I still call the new facility, even though we've been here longer than we were at the old place. Live events where we had a lot of eyes watching, whether it be a major sporting event or graduation. Pandemic. I mean, that was a huge thing for us. It was terrible as it was, we really rose to meet the needs of the community, and the community saw that. And then also, I'd say the biggest memory is the people. I mean, I've been really fortunate that I've met a lot of people, and a lot of people have become lifelong friends, who are not only just important to me professionally, but personally as well. So a lot of memories over the past 16 years.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I had really like two notes here that were things I wanted to make sure I covered with you before we run. But and I apologize if I'm restating anything you mentioned before, but like I wanted to get deeper into you so people know, where do you get funding?
Oh, that's a great question. And this will become the boring part of this. So I just
That's all
prepared.
right. That's all right.
I will
We're
give
here to spread the word.
So in Massachusetts, we have something called local franchising. In some states, it's, in order for Comcast and Verizon, who are the cable subscribers in town, to provide their services, they have to negotiate with the town of Marshfield or something board, whatever appointed by the town. In some states, they just do it at the state level. But in Massachusetts, us being old Yankees and, independents, the Comcast Verizon have to negotiate. So we're a small piece of that negotiation process. So we receive 4% of the gross quarterly profits of Comcast and Verizon on just cable, not on internet, not on phone, just strictly cable. So that makes up about 90% of our funding. The challenge is, as we talk about the change in technology, is the way people watch and consume media. Yeah. A lot of people are cutting or as we call it, cutting the cord in the industry. They're getting rid of cable, going to streaming services. So that's really impacting our major funding source. As I mentioned, this makes up over 90% of MCM's funding.
Yeah.
Other funding sources are production services, underwriters, membership, investments, etc. But the biggest challenge that we're facing is our main funding source. That we're losing funding. We expect our revenue to go down at least 20% over the next few years. And and we're already talking about what the challenges are going to be and how we're going to have to really look at them. Okay. Is it going to be reductions in staff? Is it going to be reduction in services? So, we have some real big things that we're looking at and we have to consider over the next few years.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good to know. That's good to know. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad we're getting that out there too. So
I'll mention something else too in relation to that. And so I'm also on the board of Mass Access, which is the advocacy organization for community media in the Commonwealth. We currently have a bill at the State House. It's our streaming bill, as we call it. So it would put we look at it as a modernization bill. So it would put a 5% fee on streaming services that make over 250,000 in the Commonwealth. So your Hulus, your Amazons, your Netflixes. So it would put a fee on them like there is on cable. And the way that funding would be divided currently is that 20% would go to the state, 40% would go to municipalities, and 40% would go to media centers. So it wouldn't be a complete cure-all solution, but it would help us in that we wouldn't have to take drastic measures regarding lack of funding.
Yeah, that is good to know. We'll have to follow up on that.
Yeah, it's a process. If you've been involved in the legislative process, it's a grind.
Oh, I can only imagine. Every time I think about getting more involved, I go to a couple local meetings, and then I say, I think I'll just do a podcast with Jon and back up a little bit. You're a Marshfield resident yourself. This is, again, a perfect segue. Mm-hmm. So, like, you're a Marshfield resident yourself, Hanover original, but we stole you. Yeah. You work here. I know you're a parent as well. You're a local parent now. So, what issues in the town are a concern or focus for you?
Oh, yeah. So that's a big question. And I'm someone that's invested in my community. I was on the Marshfield Chamber Board for 10 years. I was president for 4 years. I've been involved with the South Shore Chamber, served on their government affairs committee. Also a member of the Plymouth County Deputy Sheriff's Association, their board of directors. So I believe in investing in community and giving back. As a Marshfield resident, someone that works here, what's important to me is quality of life and maintain that high quality of life while keeping it affordable compared to communities around us. When we were selling our old house and buying a new house, we looked all around the South Shore. My wife and I are both from Hanover, and we were saying, all right, what's affordable? Where can we live we get a great quality life, and what's affordable to us. And Marshfield was, the place that we wanted to stay. So making sure that we kind of keep that high quality life, but affordability. And then the other thing too is, where's Marshfield going to be in 10 years?
Yeah.
I think that's a challenge that we face as a community, is that, there's, we have to be forward thinking, but also
Mhm.
with the respect to our past, and make sure when we do grow, it fits the character of our community.
Mhm.
One thing that, as an air quotes outsider, which, some people still view me as that, sometimes there's almost like a death grip of nostalgia in this town, where you have people that have been here for generations, and they're still lamenting the days of like the roller rink and all these other stuff, all the stuff that hasn't been here in years. And you can't really think that way. So I
Mhm.
think, but you have to respect the past and
Right.
respect, the nature of the community, the characteristics. So I think that's huge. I would love to see more areas focus on areas of economic development,
Mhm.
Grant Rock, Enterprise Park. Let's create opportunities for businesses to grow and develop there. So people, who maybe aren't self-employed, or small businesses, don't have to travel to Boston.
Mhm.
So those are the type of things that I would love, that, that are areas of focus for me,
That's
growing, but
great.
also at the same time, making sure it fits the character of the community.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so on point, John. It's we got to take a longer term view. I mean, housing is the issue that is most present to me. I'm in it every day and I see the affordability issues. And
Hmm.
then that in the time of like, extreme views on all sides, right? It seems like everybody's either,
Right.
you know, YIMBY or NIMBY. We got to build
Hmm.
everything. We can't build anything. And the answer, of course, is somewhere in the gray areas, somewhere in the middle, and I totally agree. And the town is due for a lot of changes,
Hmm.
not in a negative way. It's just that everything is an evolution, and I,
Yes.
I do um, you know I talk about this with a lot of people of our generation, maybe new parents, stuff like that. They don't feel like the town is necessarily, and it's anecdotal, I'm not backing this up with data,
Yeah.
but they don't always feel like the town is designed for them,
No.
or maybe
No.
like around their lifestyle. So there's a lot of, this is a growing minority. And it's
I
not
totally
to,
understand what
yeah,
you're saying, because
yeah.
if you look at a lot of people, like I didn't do this, but like my wife, for example, I'll take my wife for example. So my
Hmm.
wife, grew up in Hanover, but also she lived in the city for several years.
Yeah.
So she lived in South Boston and Allston, Cambridge, Somerville, all that. And I think one thing too is like, when you live at somewhere like that, everything's so walkable and accessible.
Yeah.
And then you come back to the South Shore and you realize, okay, I have to drive somewhere if I want to go out to a restaurant, or if I need to go get something. Like, the
Hmm.
accessibility factor is,
Yes.
is lacking, I guess you would say. Granted,
Yeah.
like, in the grand scheme of things, it's a 10-minute drive somewhere, but at the same time, you're used to kind of just stepping out your door and going somewhere.
Right. And you can say that without being like, look, I want to rubber stamp every new
Mhm.
development we have. We could,
Yeah.
the answers are in the middle. And I think sometimes like these differing viewpoints, they get lost in the shuffle. But no, I'm with you on that. I think it's a conversation. There's a lot of it going on. Tee up to gear up. Let's headline that. Let's highlight that one more time. Friday, April 26th, 6 to 9 p.m. at Winslow's Golf Range. John,
Mhm.
thank you for taking the time. We're gonna make sure every Marshfield resident sees this. This is good information. We're gonna let them know where Marshfield Community Media gets their funding. We're gonna loop
Mhm.
everybody in, and if there's anything else you'd like to leave our lovely audience with, by all means, go right ahead.
No, Craig, once
Yeah,
again, thanks so much for having me on. It's nice being on the other side of the microphone.
there we go.
And kudos to everything you're doing, with your business, which you're kicking butt and doing great. And also, most important to everyone, if you can get involved with MCM, we'd love to have you. There's 1,000 different ways you can do it. And most importantly, we hope to see you either at Tee Up to Gear Up, or you're buying raffle tickets if you can't make it to Tee Up.
There we go. Love it. Love it. Buy those raffle tickets. I'll be doing that. Thanks so much, John. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.